Jesus, look full in his wonderful, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. In the light of his glory and grace. Brings us with victors. You're the God of miracles, signs and wonders. We believe in your power. We believe in your power. You're the God of miracles. Sing it, CPC. Signs and wonders. We believe in your power. We believe. Can you say that? Say it. You're the God of miracles. Signs and wonders. We believe in your power. We believe. Yeah. One more time. You're the God.
Right, good night, everyone, and welcome back to another of our Sunday night health. And we are here for those of you joining us for the first time every single night, every single Sunday night, that is, at 7:30. This is brought to you by the Evesham Sda Church in the beautiful island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for our international audience. And tonight we have quite an interesting topic. We have been looking at it in parts, but now we're going to be looking at the entire thing, and we are looking at Herbs 101. Now, before we get started, just bow your heads with me as we invite the Lord's presence into our session. Dear Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We want to thank you, Lord, for the opportunity, Lord, where we can come another Sunday night and learn more about your natural remedies. I want to thank you, Lord, for providing these to us. I want to thank you for the help message. And as we present tonight, Lord, we just ask that your Holy Spirit may bring clarity and may bring understanding to the listeners. And also, Lord, I ask that you may imbue me with the power to speak boldly for you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So we are getting ourselves ready. We are tuning up. Don't forget to share the link. Bring your friends on. Bring your family members on. Bring your different churches on. I know a couple persons are still asking for the link. So let me just drop it here for them so that they can all be a part of this. We are going to jump right into this thing, and we are looking again at our herbs. Now, we are going to do a quick little quiz. So let us get ready for that. Before we actually pull up this slide, before we actually get the whole presentation going, where do herbs come in to our natural remedy protocol? So I'm going to give you a hint. We talked about the sink. We talked about the tap. You walk into your room, your bathroom, and the sink is overflowing. The tap, we turn that off first, we unplug the sink, and then we mop the floor. Turning off the top, unplugging the sink, mopping the floor. Which of these would herbs cover? Which of these would represent the usage of herbal remedies? Is it A, turning off the tap, B, unplugging the sink, or C, mopping the floor? Go ahead and put your answers in the chat. Let us see if we have been paying attention. Very important for us to know exactly what it is. All right, so let me just start it off with a little pop quiz here. Make sure persons are remembering the information. All right, I have one answer coming in. So let me look in the chat here now. So you can go ahead and drop your answers in the chat. Let me just repeat the question. The three options: turning off the tap, unplugging the sink, and mopping the floor. Which of these represent the use of herbal remedies? So let us see the answers coming in the chat as we get ready to move into the presentation. All right. So if I'm not getting answers fast enough, I'm going to start to call names. So I'll give you guys 60 more seconds to get the answers over to me. And then we'll start calling names before we actually jump into the presentation for tonight. Because it's very important that we start it off this week so you will know where in the sequence herbs come in. All right. So, all right. So I'm going to put some person on the spot. K, Greenwich, Roxanne, John, Cassandra, Arlette, Charlene. Drop your answers to me in the chat. Which of these represent the use of herbal remedies? Lovely, lovely. Persons are still jumping on, no problem. We're going to take our time and we're going to jump from there. All right, so let's see. Let us see what we have here. All right, so we don't have any answers. Wow, okay. Looks like we have to play that video again. Well, if we have to play it, we have to play it. So we're going to play that video again because the goal of this is to make sure that we understand the different topics that are being covered here. So seeing that I have no answers, I'm going to have to play the video, right? So let's get that video up. Johnny, no answers there for me? Let us see, let us see. All right, so here we go with the video. Lovely.
It says that disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. What are the laws of health? Pure air, sunlight, rest, temperance, exercise, proper diet, the use of water, trust in divine power. Now, these are the 8 laws of health. So, as long as these laws of health are in place, everything is fine. Now, as soon as you violate, you're going to start a chain of events. So when there is a violation, the formula says that conditions develop. So as soon as you violate the laws of health, your body will start developing conditions. That could be coughing, sneezing, wheezing, whatever the case is, conditions are going to be developed. It could be elevated or higher than normal blood pressure, higher than normal blood sugar readings, hormonal imbalance. These are things that can start to develop. So now, if nothing is done here, the system is going to fix the problem and it's going to try and free itself. So that's called system freeing from these conditions that have developed. Now, if you leave that unchecked, eventually a disease is going to develop. That disease could be hypertension, it could be diabetes, it could be PCOS, it could be fibroids, any of those diseases, and many others could develop. Now, check this out. How did this chain start? It started from a violation. Instead, what we do, we give a drug medication to treat that condition, and here's what happens. Now, a drug medication is administered, new conditions develop, the system then tries to free itself from those conditions, and a new disease is formed. Then we give drugs to fix that disease. So what happens? A new condition is developed. The system then tries to free itself from that condition, and then now you have a new disease developing. And that is why when persons start drug medication, they will start with one issue, but then develop 3, 4, 5 and different issues from just one initial issue. You did not get sick because you were lacking any drug medication, cough medication, sneezing medication. You got sick because there was a violation. So let us fix this. So if we break the violation, the conditions will go away, the system will have no need to free itself, and the disease will go away. Now, where do herbs come in? Let's build it back up. Once we break the violation, then we can now introduce herbs here to help to deal with the conditions. Condition goes away to help to deal with the system freeing, and eventually the disease will go away. But your problem was not a lack of drugs or a lack of herbs. Your problem was a violation. So before you start any sort of disease reversal, if you do not plan on stopping the violation, then you will just build this massive chain of more conditions, more system freeing, more diseases. And this is the principle that I want every single person to get, because once you learn this, then it becomes easy. But if you do not plan on breaking the violation, then nothing we do here would make any sense.
All right, so now we have it there. We're going to ask the question again. So, the question was, for those of you who just joined us, we're going to start this thing off. We're looking at Herbs 101. Before we teach Herbs 101, we must understand where in the matrix does herbs fit in. So we said for every disease that we did high blood pressure, we did diabetes, We even look at some other conditions. And when we give the protocol, we use the example of the sink. Now, there's three parts to the sink. The turning off the sink, turning off the tap, sorry, unplugging the sink, and mopping the floor. Of these three, which one of these represent the use of herbal remedies? Is it turning off the tap? Is it unplugging the sink? Or is it mopping the floor? The question is on the floor, and we have answers coming in. Go ahead in the chat and put your answers in the chat. All right, so let's see what the answers come in now. I give you a hint with the video. I think by now you will know what it is. All right, let's see it. So in the chat, which of these represent the use of herbal remedies? Is it turning off the tap? Is it unplugging the sink? Or is it mopping the floor? All right. All right, so the answers are now coming in. All right, answers are coming in. They're coming in. All right, so I think we waited long enough. The correct answer is mopping the floor. Ellie got that answer correct. Janine, you are correct. That is correct. So let's recap because we are teaching to learn. This is not an exam, we're teaching to learn. So remember we said, when you are dealing with a disease, disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. Every disease has a cause. When you are about to fix that disease, whatever that disease is, you go to the thing that has the most impact. So, for example, we looked at high blood pressure. We saw the direct correlation between what we eat and elevated high or elevated blood pressure. So, what we eat, specifically our nutrition, will be turning off the tap because that has the biggest impact when it comes to raising our blood pressure. Now, unplugging the sink, that is the other lifestyle, or let's put it the other way, the other laws of health. So, if you want to put it in a next format, you can say of all the laws of health, there is one that is going to be creating the most damage. So, in terms of high blood pressure, it will be proper diet. So, that violation of proper diet will create the most damage. So, it leaves us with 6 more laws of health. So, unplugging the sink now is dealing with the others. So, that will be adding exercise, making sure we're in the sunlight, drinking sufficient water, trusting in divine power, etc., etc. Now, once we clean it up, once we unplug the sink, once we turn off the top, now we mop it up with herbs. So herbs is where we mop it up. And as you saw in the video, the herbs only came in after we broke the violation and we do the other stuff, right? So I'm going to ask you that question next week again. Make sure you remember it, right? Lovely. So that being said, we have a base with which to work with here, and we're going to jump right into this thing. Now, we are looking tonight at Herbs 101, how to utilize the power of herbs in your life. And what I'm going to be looking at specifically tonight is giving you the theory or the overview of herbs. So I may not go into any specific conditions as we looked at those in the previous weeks, but I'm bringing this in so now when you have any condition you're faced with or you're given any herbal remedies, you will know how to work with them. We're borrowing this presentation from the natural healing through the laws of health. And of course, we're going to start with our power text, which says, "And the Lord said, If thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee." Now, when we talk about herbs, we are looking specifically, categories normally called botanical medicine. So botanical looks at herbs, barks, all of that stuff. So that is the category we're going to be looking at. Now let's work with some definitions for tonight. So what is a botanical? According to the definition we work with, a botanical is a substance obtained from a plant and used typically in medicinal or cosmetic products, right? So that is what a botanical is. Now we got to look at the word medicine, and that comes from the Latin word medicina, and that is any substance that affects the mind or body administered for its therapeutic or preventative agents. Now, we're going to take our time, we're going to build this thing up. So, our focus for tonight will be substance obtained from a plant that affects the mind or body and that is administered for a therapeutic or preventative effect. We see here in the Bible, there are a couple of texts where different writers would have spoke about their use or their interaction or even the Lord's use of medicinal herbs. We have some in Job, we have in Psalms, we have in Ezekiel. Now, we also have a very prominent one that was in, Ezekiel, right? Yeah, in Ezekiel. So, we're now going to look at something. Now, if you go through the herbs, you will come across herbs that are toxic as well as herbs that are good for you. Now, this is something you need to understand. Christ never planted the seeds of death in the system. Satan planted these seeds when he tempted Adam to eat of the tree of knowledge, which meant disobedience to God. Not one noxious plant was placed in the Lord's great garden, but after Adam and Eve sinned, poisonous herbs sprang up. And the word noxious here means harmful or poisonous. So somebody may ask, if God created a perfect world, where did these herbs come up from? Where did these poisonous herbs come from? And here we have the answer from one of Sister White's reading. Now, in the parable of the sower, remember the question was asked, did not thou sow good seed in the field? From whence had the tares? And then it says it came in from the enemy. Now, and as it says here in the quotation, right? Now, let's look at the word amalgamation because this is something we need to pay attention to. And amalgamation means the process or the action or result of combining or uniting. Now, if you go to this place called Alwick Garden in Nottingburgland in the UK, there's actually a place called the Poison Garden. And this really has some herbs in there that are, as they would say, poisonous and lethal to the body. Now, when it comes to herbal medicine, much of the world actually use herbal medicine, and this is something that you will find rather shocking, but 80% of the world's population use herbal medicine for their primary health care. And it also says that nearly 3 out of 4 patients who use alternative health will never tell their doctors about it. And you might wonder, why are so much persons using herbal remedies? Now, the answer is simple. Many persons have lost faith in mainstream medicines. Now, we have to stick a pin here. We're not saying anything is wrong with mainstream medicines, but this is generally why persons are making the shift towards natural remedies. I would interject though, after 2021, after the COVID season, a lot of persons, this number is probably higher because a lot of persons have lost faith in the traditional medicine system, and you can't bring words like injection and vaccine around people right now because they have had such a terrible experience with it. So even higher after that period, persons are now looking for natural remedies. I mean, right in our office there in St. Vincent, we have clients coming in time after time again who have used all of the traditional remedies to deal with their ailments, and they have gotten to the point now where clients will tell you they don't want any more drugs. So they now are making the shift over to natural remedies. Now, the second one is simple economics. Conventional healthcare is expensive, and especially if you live in the US. I paid a visit to the US last year, and just simple treatments, things that we take for granted, like a simple dental cleaning or an examination, the kind of money you have to pitch out for these things is ridiculous. And in some places in the US, for example, if you don't have insurance, don't worry about going to the hospital. So it is like insurance is more important than saving lives. Now, thankfully for us here in the Caribbean and most of these Caribbean countries, you can still go to the hospital, especially if you're in an emergency, if you don't have money, and they will take care of you. But I know in some places in the US you can't do that. If you don't have that insurance, turn around and hope for the best, right? Now, again, this is another reason why people like natural remedies. And I'm sure most of you can attest to this. Many people believe that anything natural is normally better. So if it comes from the nature, they tend to believe that that is a lot better for them, right? And the herbal industry, surprising to know, has started to make a more worldly presence. So persons are now becoming aware of herbal remedies. And again, if you look through your Facebook, I'm sure at some point you will scroll through some herbal remedy coming up. So the awareness to herbal remedies has become a lot more widespread now than it was a couple of years ago. And of course, the main reason is that God is exalting natural remedies. Now, let's read this quotation. It says, the Lord has provided antidotes for disease in simple plants, and these can be used by faith. Now, there are some words that we need to be highlighting here. It says that the Lord has provided antidotes for disease in simple plans, and these can be used by faith with no denial of faith. For by using the blessings provided by God, our benefit, for our benefit, we are cooperating in Him. And some persons believe that if you use natural remedies and don't just trust in God entirely, that is showing a lack of faith. But according to this reading, the Lord is the one who provided natural remedies. So when you use these remedies with faith, believing that the Lord will heal you, you will get that healing for which you are looking for. Now, He can use water, sunshine, and the herbs which He has caused to grow in healing maladies brought in by indiscretion or accident. We do not manifest, and here's the point coming again, we do not manifest a lack of faith when we ask God to bless His remedies. True faith will thank God for the knowledge of how to use these precious blessings in a way which will restore mental and physical vigor. The Lord has given some simple herbs of the field that at times are beneficial. And if every family were educated on how to use these herbs in case of sickness, much suffering might be prevented and no doctor need be called. These old-fashioned simple herbs used intelligently would have recovered many sick who have died under drug medication. That's a very powerful statement. So it is said here to us that one, we need to take a deep interest in learning about the herbal remedies. Why? Because in the past, a lot of persons die with an untimely death just because either them or their providers were ignorant of the power of the herbs. And in another lecture, we'll actually look some more the herbs locally here in St. Vincent. There are a couple authors who have researched these and compiled books on the different herbs that we have there in St. Vincent for the different ailments that they can be used for. So we'll do that in a subsequent lecture. So let's just keep out there. Now, let's read this quotation. It would have been better from the first all drugs had been kept out of our sanitariums. Now we're talking about back in the days when we had our sanitariums. And the use had been made of such simple remedies as are found in water, pure air, sunlight, and some of the simple herbs growing in the field. These would be just as efficacious as drugs used under mysterious names and concocted by human science, and they would leave no injurious effects in the systems. More deaths have been caused by drug taking than all other causes combined. Now, I want that to stick in a bit. More deaths have been caused by drug taking than by all other causes combined. And I have a slide coming up where you're going to be seeing that. Now, multitude of physicians and multitudes of drugs have caused the inhabitants of the earth and have carried thousands and tens of thousands to untimely graves. Now, these are some very strong statements from the prophetess sister, right? Very strong statements. And it goes to show that even our medical professionals, our doctors, need to become familiar with the use of natural remedies. They need to become familiar with the herbal remedies that they are available to them in their country, because you do not want to be one of the multitude of these physicians who would have caused inhabitants of the earth and carried thousands and tens of thousands to an untimely death. Right? Now, the use of herbs was actually instituted at creation by God, and we saw that in Genesis 1:29. Man was given every herb bearing seed for food at creation. Now I'm going to show you guys some of the drugs that are popular here, and I'm going to show you where most of these active drugs, in fact, if you look at all of the pharmaceutical drugs, most of them get their origin from a natural remedy. What they do, they take the active ingredient in that natural remedy and then they add some other things to it so they can patent it. Now, this is important. Let me stick a pin here. And you would ask, why not just using natural ingredients? You cannot patent something from nature. Now, what patent means? It means putting your label on it and making it exclusive to you, right? So it's like a branding sort of business tactic that these big farmers use. So what they would do, they would go and look for the active ingredient in a specific herb. they realized the active ingredient is this compound. They would extract the compound or make a synthetic version of it, add other few other chemicals to it, because if you add other chemicals now you can make it your own. Then they will label it with a name, patent it, and then sell it for great money and make a massive profit on it, right? So that is why they normally use this. However, as we saw in previous lectures, we know that drugs do not cure disease. They only change its form and location, only for them to reappear in a different format at some later point. And that video that we did earlier, it shows that yes, the drug may treat a specific symptom, but then a new one would appear, a new one would appear, and then you need another drug. And it's a very great business model for the owners of those drugs, but a very poor one for your body. So just a little backstory on how drugs actually come. Now let's look at some of the popular drugs that we are familiar with. So we are all familiar with aspirin. Now aspirin is normally used to thin the blood or relieve pain. Now aspirin actually comes from the white willow bark, and the active ingredients is salicin, right? And next one is chloroquine, and this is something that's used to treat malaria. And for those of you who've been around the COVIDious time, you would have heard about this hydroxychloroquine. You would have heard that name come up quite a lot. That actually comes from the cinchona bark. And for those of you who have ever used the spike protein, the cinchona bark is one of the herbs that we use in there. The active ingredient in there is quinine. Now let's look at some more. This one is digoxin, hope I pronounce that right, and that is used to strengthen heart congestion or heart failure. And the source of that is actually foxglove, and the active ingredient is digitalis, right? Digitalis, right? The next one, morphine, typically used for pain. The source of that is the poppy flower, and the active ingredient in that is opium. And you're seeing quite a bunch of them here, and these are all of the drugs that is normally used, and you will see that all of them have their origin in some sort of a natural plant or remedy. All right. Now, as we mentioned, the reasons that they use the drugs, let's just switch gears quite a bit here. Right. Lovely. So, as we mentioned before, even though drugs, and this is why most persons like drugs, because it gives you a very fast effect, right? It gives you a fast effect. However, every drug has a side effect. And if you doubt it, just look at your TV. And when they advertise a drug, when they advertise any drug, you would see the drug and then you would listen and always pay attention to the end of the ad, because the end of the ad is when they would lower their voice and list all of the other side effects. So you would have drugs, for example, that is used to treat congestive heart failure, but some of these side effects may be heart failure or clotting. So you are treating a drug to fix one condition where the side effect could be that same condition that you're trying to fix. And you can see some of the examples here. So we have amidoprine, that has white blood cells disorder. We have oral contraceptive, and this is a big one. Thromboembolism, thromboembolism, and that is blood clots. We have the statins, and this is something I use to control high cholesterol. So like when you go for your high cholesterol medication, they normally give you statin drugs. One of the effects of statin drugs is muscle degeneration. Now, muscle degeneration is actually detrimental for your metabolism and some other issues, especially like controlling your blood sugar levels, because the more muscles you have in your body, it's like a sponge to sucking up all of that extra glucose. It also protects you as you age past 50 against falls and the ability to recover faster. And we actually did a study recently, or we actually found a study recently, where we saw there was a direct correlation between a person's strength, aka the amount of muscles they have, and the length of their life. So you may think, okay, I'm just losing some muscle, that's not a big issue, but there's actually a direct correlation between your strength, muscle, and also the length of your life. So there's a lot of things that can be said there. Now there's actually a drug, and it is called thalidomide, and it's a drug that was developed in the 1950s by West German pharmaceutical company, and it was actually originally intended as a sedative or tranquilizer, but like most other drugs, it was soon used to treat a wide range of other conditions, including cold, flus, nausea, morning sickness in pregnant women. Now, keep this in mind. This was originally created as a sedative. How does a sedative now come to start treating cold, flus, nausea, and morning sickness? And just like most drugs, you see this tend to happen. However, these were some of the effects. You had persons born in with small arms, no arms, and this was the effect of using that drug. And this is not an isolated situation. If you actually pay attention to the drug world, you'll see a lot of drugs came out hot and pressed on the market and then only to be pulled off the market a couple of years later, in some cases a couple of months later. Let's bring it right home. For example, the Moderna and AstraZeneca. Those came out during the COVID period. AstraZeneca had to be pulled off because it was causing blood clots, right? Moderna also got pulled off. I think the only one that was remaining was Pfizer. And then now a new study came out showing the effects of Pfizer and all of the detriment that was caused by persons who got these mass inoculations. So there you see, every single drug that comes out will always have a side effect. And if you know anybody with, this is one you're probably familiar with, anybody who uses drugs for diabetes, the next thing that normally they will develop is kidney problems. Because the same drug that treats diabetes, that tends to damage your kidneys. So after a while, if they're using it constantly, you'll finally start to have low kidney function tests, and God forbid, worst case, they might have to start to be on dialysis, right? So that's just something to note. Let's look at this one. This is an important one. We talked about this earlier. We're just going to look at it again. So this actually shows the 10-year death rates from medical intervention. Now, again, note we are not saying that we are advising persons against going to the doctors and using drugs. But I'm showing you the numbers. And what I'm also saying is that it is very important for each and every individual to become familiar with the use of natural remedies. Why? Because when you learn to use natural remedies, you can prevent yourself from becoming another statistic. There will be times and places where you have to go to the doctor. That goes without a doubt. But for most of the conditions, if you look at most of the conditions that persons go to doctors for, most of it can be done by just making lifestyle changes and then introducing natural remedies. So that is what we are seeking here to do to you tonight, is to show you the other way, so that only when the situation becomes critical, maybe it's something out of your control, an emergency, like you got into an accident, there is something sticking out your body, there's probably no herb that could take care of that. So in a case like that, you need to go to the ER. But for the simple things, a simple cough, the child has a little flu, the child has a fever, these are things that can be taken care of with natural remedies. They can be taken care of with hydrotherapy. They can be taken care of with changing in lifestyle in lifestyle choices. And so you don't need to go and get antibiotics and all of these things in your body. All right. So if you look at this, from adverse drug reaction, you have, and this is a 10-year study, you have 1.06 million persons dying from adverse drug reactions. Now, from medical error, that means the medical profession made a mistake, whatever that is. You have 0.98 million. From bed sores, which of course result from extended hospitalization, you have 1.15 million, right? And let's come down from unnecessary procedures. This is the next big one. You have 371,360, and then from surgery related, 320,000. Now, keep in mind, these are death rates from medical intervention. When you go to medical intervention is designed to save your life, but we are seeing that these are from just medical intervention. And this is one that really got my attention. If you look at the death rates from adverse drug reaction, this is the top of the list, 1.06 million. This is from adverse drug reaction. There is no outcry against the persons dying from overdose or adverse drug reactions. But what I always find strange, and it kind of shows the spirit behind the medical fraternity, is that whenever you come out with a herb, just one bad thing go wrong, and they demonize that herb from top to bottom. One, right? 1,000 person could have used it. Just one person may have had an adverse reaction, and then just something off, they chew up or something, and that becomes demonized. But here you have the pharmaceutical industry having 1.06 million adverse reactions just from the drugs alone. When I talk about the procedures, but you never hear outcry from there. So it kind of goes to show the spirit behind this industry. Now, this is a problem when it comes to medicines, right? And again, remember, I'm not demonizing medicine. I'm just going to show you, I'm showing you everything. So when a person is given a drug medication, Most of these conditions or most of these factors are not taken into place. One is the stress. Two is the person's lifestyle in terms of are they getting sufficient exercise, the caloric intake, the kind of foods they're eating, the environmental toxins. These are some of the factors you normally hear a doctor would ask you before giving a drug medication. However, some of these drug medication, when these conditions are present, can amplify the negative effects of how that drug medication could operate inside of your body. Right? Now, a very popular drug medication that I'm sure most of us here, including myself, have used at some point in your life is antibiotics. Now, antibiotics has its place, but there is always, as with any other drug, a negative effect that must be noted. And the antibiotics, if you think about them, anti means against, biotics means life. So these antibiotics are designed to kill the good bacteria. Sorry, to kill the bad bacteria. However, they don't go in and say, okay, you guys are the bad guys, I'm just going to attack you, and you guys are the good guys, you guys step aside. When antibiotics goes into your system, they kill everything. So good and bad. Now, why is that dangerous? Because the good bacteria is in there to create balance. It also helps in the digestion of certain foods, and they also help with creating healthy gut environment. Last week, you heard Dr. Dion talking about that gut environment, and gut, that brain and gut balance environment, right? So when you use constantly using antibiotics, what is going to happen? You're not going to only kill the bad bacteria, but you're also going to kill the good bacteria. In addition to that, bacteria being a life form becomes adaptive to the antibiotics. So what you would find is that when you use the first dose antibiotics, yes, they got a good effect. But then when you reach second, third, and fourth dosage, it's like it's not working anymore. Why? Because the drugs or the antibiotics, the bacteria, sorry, has become resistant to that specific antibiotics. And that is why you're hearing these terms now like super bugs. So you have to create even stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger antibiotics to wipe them out, which is also wiping out your good bacteria. And also, when you use antibiotics over a long period of time, it reduces your amount of B vitamins and vitamin K absorption in the gut. Why is B vitamins important? When B vitamins go down, that is when most of the nervous problems start coming up. Right? So once B vitamins get affected, most of the nervous problems will start coming up. Right? As we say, I want to stick this in here. In emergency, we may use a drug medication to buy time, but do not make drugs your friend and say that there is no problem with it. Find a safer alternative. And we're going to be looking at some of these as we go in tonight. So there is places like if somebody has stage 4 cancer, terminal cancer, if somebody got into an accident where there's something sticking out of them, there's probably no herb that could fix that fast, right? So there's time and place for that. But it should always be in an emergency situation. It should not be a lifestyle situation. All right. And there are some persons, as soon as they get sick, they go and get a cough medicine. As soon as the kids start a cough, they flood them with Panadol. Have a headache, Panadol. Um, I know persons taking aspirin for blood thinning. Now, do you know that aspirin actually damages your stomach lining? When your stomach lining gets damaged, now you're going to be exposed to a bunch of new problems, right? There are other things that you can use to help your blood. We looked at some last week. We looked at the use of lentils, which has L-arginine. We look at the sunlight, which helps with L-arginine. We look at the actual herb L-arginine and L-citrulline, which can help with that. So you don't need to be taking aspirin to thin your blood, right? There are actual natural remedies that you can use to do that. Right. So let us drop down now to the fun part. So now we have covered that. Let's now get into the important part, which is the herbal 101, herbology 101. So when it comes to herbs, there are multiple parts of the plant that we'll use. So we'll use the stem, we can use the roots, the leaf, the flowers, the seeds, the bulb, the fruits, right? So these are some of the parts of the plant that we would use. Now, you would hear dried herbs or you would hear green or fresh herbs. The main difference between both is that the dried herbs contain only about 20% water, whereas the fresh herbs contain 80% water. Now, in terms of dosage and strength, the dried herbs tend to be stronger. So, for example, when we did the high blood pressure, remember we mentioned using the dried leaves. The reason we tell you use the dried leaves because the dry leaves will tend to be more potent, they will tend to be stronger. And for all of the things I'll be referencing here tonight, I'll be referencing the dried leaf version. All right, so just keep that in mind. Now, that being said, let's now look at some of the methods in which we can take out the active ingredients from each of these herbs. So there is what we call the decoction method. Anybody here is familiar with the decoction method? If you are, just put a one in the chat. If not, we're going to learn about it. So when we use the decoction method, we tend to use the decoction method for the harder parts of the plant. So we're thinking like the bark, the roots, these sort of hard parts of the plant. This is what we use the decoction method for. And the decoction method is very simple. So what you would do first, you would get a nice clean pan, fresh water, and then you would add the herbs. So let's just use a herb, for example. Let's say we're going to use cinnamon bark. So we'll take the barks, we'll throw them in the water, and then we'll bring that to a boil. Now, once it boils, you leave it to boil for about 15-20 minutes, and then you turn off the heat, cover the pot, and you leave it to draw out. Now, the draw out time could go anywhere from 40 minutes all the way up to overnight, right? So the purpose of that, because these are harder plants, they need to sit in the water more so that more of the active ingredients could be pulled out or diffused into the water for which you are going to be drawing it from. Now, once that happens, then you would strain it and you would drink it. We normally recommend you drink it within 24 hours after, but there is an exception to that. There are some herbs that could last a bit longer, especially if you refrigerate them. And we know you wouldn't have the time to go and draw it out every time you want to use it. So remember this, whenever you're using hard parts of a plant, you're going to be using the decoction method. Now, just for the purpose of this exercise, just give me some examples in the chat of hard part of a plant. So I just give you one, the cinnamon bark. Give me some other parts of a plant that might be considered the hard part of a plant. So you think of the roots of plants as well, or plants that come from the roots, or rhizome, just to give you some hints. And let's see if we could kind of pull this together. So what are some other herbs that you think will be used in the decoction method? So another one would be burdock root, the actual root of the burdock plant. And next one would be ginger. We'll use that for ginger as well, because that's the root. And next one could be turmeric. So those that tend to be the root of the plant, those one will tend to use that for. All right. So there are some options in which you would use the decoction method for. Now the other one is going to be the infusion method. So infusion now, this will be for the soft, right? Correct. Aniseed. That is one. Aniseed seed. That is also one as well. And even fenugreek seed. That will be one that you'll use the decoction method for, right? So like your seeds. So the other method now, if that is for the hard plants, there has to be a method for the soft plants. And why I'm mentioning this to you, because sometimes when persons prepare herbs, just throw everything in a pot and boil, right? So that is not the way it should be done. So for the soft or delicate parts, so we're thinking, looking at the leaves, the flowers, the buds, the stems, these ones, you will use the infusion method. And the infusion method is pretty simple. All you will do is first of all, gather your dry herbs, whatever portions you need to, get some boiling water, so bring your water to a boil, and then pour it over the herbs, cover it, and this one you would leave it for a little bit longer. So you would leave it for, sorry, a little bit shorter. We leave it for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then you'll strain it, right? Because it's a soft and delicate part, you don't want to damage it too much. At the same time, you just leave it long enough so that you can pull out the active ingredients that you could use. So let's list now some examples of the delicate parts of a plant that you could use the infusion method. I'll start you off with one. Basil. So basil leaves, when you make your basil leaves tea, that is one. Let me see some other options, put it in the chat, just to make sure that we are grabbing the concept. So when we leave here tonight and we start putting together our herbs, we'll know exactly which method we use for which. So give me some other examples of herbal leaves that we can use the infusion method for. Right, mint leaf, exactly. Bay leaf, correct, correct. Cinnamon leaves as well. Soursop leaves. What about breadfruit leaves? What do you guys, which one do you think we'll use for breadfruit leaves? The decoction or the infusion? Let me see if you're paying attention. Thyme, that is correct, Marlene. And for the breadfruit leaf, which one do you think we'll use? Would we use the infusion method or will we use the decoction method? Based on what we said earlier. That is correct. We use the infusion method. Correct? Because it is a leaf. Even though the breadfruit leaf is dry, when it's hard, when it's dry, you'll still use the infusion method. Right? Now, there's a next method that we could use for herbs, and this is called poultice. Now, this is where we'd use herbs if we're using it for a extraction purpose. If we're going to put it on the skin to pull out stuff, then we would use the poultice method for this. Okay, we see someone coming in, mango leaf, soursop leaf, that's right, Kate. Correct, correct. So all those you will use the infusion method. Now the poultice, these are soft, moist plant tissues applied warm to the surface area of the body to alleviate pain or to draw out inflammation and infection. So some examples of herbs that we can use for poultices would be things like turmeric, charcoal, which is a big one, comfrey, cabbage, and a potato poultice. And as we see here, all you will do is get the herbs together, right? In some cases, you would add it to things that would make it a little bit more viscous. So like flaxseed gel, or even there's the next one that we normally use there, marshmallow roots. These would try to break it into like a gel. These form a gel. So flaxseed would form a gel and marshmallow would form a gel. So you then crush up your herbs, mix it with that, and then you place it on the affected area, tie it down with a plastic wrap just to hold it there, and then you bandage it around. Now, something to note is that when you're doing poultices, you want to make sure you apply them warm to the surface, right? So that the more of the active ingredients can be pulled out. Let me just check the chat here. Right. Right. So you want to make sure you apply them warm. Now, a very powerful one that I'm sure most of you already know is charcoal. Right? Charcoal is a very potent herb that we use in poultices. We'd actually apply it in the area, wrap it around, and it will draw out toxins, pull toxins out through the skin. So that is just something there that you guys may be familiar with. If not, that is something that you definitely want to start using in your everyday life, right? Now, this was also one that was mentioned in the Bible, and that was by King Hezekiah, and he actually used a poultice. So in 2 Kings 27, Hezekiah in his terminal illness, and lump of figs was placed on his boil. So the ripe figs is what he used, and that made a poultice. And ripe figs or fig powder can make a poultice for benign or cancerous tumors or boils. So there you have one of those being used in the Bible, and ripe figs can actually be used for that. Now that we're talking about herbs, we're going to put this into categories. So let's say we're not going to look at a specific herb for a specific condition tonight. We're just going to categorize them. Now, this is always one we want to pay attention to. When somebody is pregnant, and I will even go a step further and say while they're nursing, there are some herbs you want to avoid. I'll mention it once. Let's look at the pregnant one for now. If somebody is pregnant, you want to avoid barberry root, cascara sagrada, senna leaves. Now, let me stick a pin on cascara sagrada and senna leaves. These are some very potent detox. If somebody is also breastfeeding, you will not want to give them cascara sagrada or senna. Why? Because these are detox. They will pull the toxins from the body, but the toxins may also end up inside of the breast milk, which is going to the baby. So that when clients come to us and one of the things we ask them whenever they're doing a detox, so whether it is the drink to shrink or the 7-day cleanse, we ask them if they are breastfeeding. As long as they're breastfeeding, no, we're not going to give them any cleanse, 7-day or drink to shrink to be used because both of those have senna in them. And you don't want that to be going into the baby. You don't want to fix one problem and transfer it to the next person. So keep that in mind. Wormwood as well. Wormwood is also something that we use for parasite cleanse. So wormwood is one of those herbs that we use there. Feverfew, juniper berries, pennyroyal, rue, golden seal, Chinese angelica, consuming celery, parsley, watercress, caffeine, chocolate, and tea. Now, caffeine, of course, is a stimulant. And if somebody is pregnant, the last thing you want to be doing is stimulating them, right? It could cause false contractions. Chocolate, on the other hand, this is one that most persons are not familiar with. Let me tell you exactly why chocolate is there. What about if a person had just, this is a question coming. What about if the person just had a miscarriage as well? So if the person just had a miscarriage, you'll give their body some time to recover. Now, normally what we use for persons, especially after pregnancy, is that same one I called earlier, fenugreek. The tea of fenugreek, we use that for persons who would have had a baby, which will tend to treat miscarriage the same way. but you will not give them senna. You will not give them senna. Remember, they just delivered a baby. When it was through miscarriage or normal purposes, you will not give them a senna because you want to induce any crazy contractions. So you will give them something that will be more of a gentle detox to let out like the whatever passages or whatever breakdowns will happen after the delivery. You will not give them senna. So you see, strong herbs like senna and cascara sagrada, especially senna, you will not give it to them. And the next one I'll add here as well, because I came across a patient like this recently. If somebody has had a chronic or inflammation of the bowels, or like a client I had recently, she had to remove a part of her colon, her large colon, you will not give them senna, right? So keep that in mind. If somebody have any inflammatory issues in the colon, if they have removed a part of the colon, you will not give them a strong detox like senna, right? So keep that in mind. Lovely. Chocolate. Now, if you look at the chemical structure in terms of the way it looks chemically under microscope, chocolate and caffeine or coffee has a similar effect. Caffeine is, well, coffee will be caffeine. In chocolate, it is theobromine. Both of them have a similar stimulating effect inside the body. So just like you'd avoid caffeine, you'd avoid coffee, not coffee, chocolate for the same reason. And that goes to cocoa as well. Now, tea is for the same reason because it has this stimulant, caffeine. And let's look a little bit about tea. So tea is prepared by steeping the leaves of the Thea sinensis bush in hot water. So in green tea, that is the unfermented version. So when you see green tea boxes inside of the shelf, that is the unfermented version. And then black tea is the fermented version. So when persons really counsels and they say to avoid like black tea, the purpose here avoid black tea because black tea has caffeine in it. And it also has, if something is fermented, it will tend to have alcohol in it as well. Right? Green tea is unfermented, but green tea has caffeine in it. So the black tea is fermented, caffeine, and alcohol. The green tea has caffeine in it. So that's why we'd avoid those. And some other types of teas that has the same effect would be white tea, red tea, oolong tea, chia tea, Earl Grey tea, iced tea. All of these have the same effect. Right? So that is why we normally tell persons to avoid. As we mentioned, tea contains caffeine, a toxic alkaloid, and caffeine penetrates every cell in the body. Tea drinking causes vitamin B1 deficiency. As we mentioned with the B deficiencies, these can lead to nervous disorders like Parkinson's, fatigue, irritability, depression, digestive disorders, lack of appetite, constipation, and even cardiac failure because they are stimulating. Now, this was an interesting story. I'm just going to skip over it for now, just for the interest of time. But let's look at charcoal. We mentioned charcoal earlier. Charcoal is one of those herbs that you should keep in your house every single time, especially if you have children, if you travel a lot. Why? Because apart from the benefits that is up here on the list, charcoal is one of those first aid remedies. If somebody has poison, if somebody had accidentally or intentionally used poison, charcoal is the first thing to pump them with. So charcoal tends to bind the toxins and pull them out the body. If you ate something bad and you get an upset stomach, that's why I say if you're traveling, you always want to keep the charcoal capsules or the powder, whichever one is works for you, with you in your bag. Because you're traveling to go for a conference, you're traveling to go some important event, and then you eat an airport food or something at the hotel, now you have an upset stomach. So charcoal will be one of the first things that you would administer in a case like that, and that would help in that specific situation, right? So charcoal is something that you really, really should. And then for those of you who do regular detox, you can mix the charcoal remedy while you're doing a detox. So if you're using the 7-day cleanse drink to shrink or any other detox herbs, while you're doing that, you could use the charcoal as well. Why? Because the charcoal will ensure that whatever toxins get released is bonded, neutralized, and safely removed. Right? So just something to note there. Lovely. Now, this is one of the remedies that was actually in one of Sister White's books, Selected Messages. And this was for a cough. So it was 1 cup of boiled honey, add in 8 to 10 drops of food grade eucalyptus oil, and you take 1 teaspoon every 2 hours. So if you know your kid or anybody has like a cough, a constant cough that is just keeping them up at night, you might want to take a snapshot of this. It's 1 cup of boiled honey. You add 8 to 10 drops of food grade eucalyptus oil, and you take 1 teaspoon every 2 hours. The next one will be a warm foot bath with eucalyptus leaf. Why the warm foot bath? Remember we said earlier, Warm in the body, the blood is attracted to warm. So if you have like a head cold or head congestion, that warm would draw the blood away from that area and cause that congestion to go away. All right? So something there to note. Now, if you know anybody has nervousness or need something to quiet the nerves, a cup of tea made from catnip, that is something that you could use. So a cup of tea made from catnip, and you would actually make the same infusion method where you take the leaves, pour boiling water, allow it to draw out 15 to 20 minutes, strain and drink. Now, some other flowers and herbs that you can use is passion flower. And passion flower, in case you guys didn't know, is that flower that grows up on the passion fruit. It's like a purple white flower. That is the passion flower. Valerian could be used as well. Ashwagandha. And if you're using the ashwagandha, use the KSM 66. That one is the more potent extraction. Rosemary, which I know most of us have in St. Vincent. Chamomile, hops, or lady's slipper. So these are herbs if you know anxiety or you need to quiet enough. These are some herbs that you can use for that. Right? Now, what about a remedy for congestion, sinus, cold, headache? Then this was the next one. You will take some water, warm water preferably, and you will put a little bit of mustard in it and have the person put their feet inside. So warm water with some mustard mix, put their feet inside, and that will tend to help with congestion, sinus, cold, headache, with these specific conditions. And here's some of the remedies that came straight out of selected messages. Right? Now, for eyes that are weak, painful, or has inflammation, you'll use a flannel cloth, or you can also use a well, we call it cheesecloth, but you would use a cotton cloth. And what you will do, you will damp that cloth in warm water. We say hot water, but warm water and salt, and apply to the eyes. So you get that, you mix up some water and salt, warm water. You put that cloth inside. Of course, you'll make sure the temperature is good enough for the person to put on their face, and then put it on their eyes, and that would help if that person's eyes are weak, painful, or has inflammation. Right? Lovely. So now we look at the infusion, we look at the decoction, we're going to look at something called the tonic herbs. Now, tonic herbs, I like to recommend persons use them anywhere from 30 to 90 days. And what tonic herbs do, they actually help to strengthen the body. So, for example, the organs that are responsible for certain functions inside of your body, these herbs will strengthen these organs so that they can perform their functions better. Because what you would find is that most of the debilitating conditions come because of the constant taxation upon these organs in not performing at 100% ability. So when you use these tonic herbs, it kicks them back into gear and they start performing at the optimum. And that's why we recommend you use anywhere from 30 to 90 days. Now remember, these are herbal remedies. So you would need about 90 days, 30 to 90 days to get your full effect from them. You won't get it like a pharmaceutical drug, but at the same time, you won't have any side effect. So let's look at some of the tonic herbs for the cardiovascular system. As I said, tonight we're putting things in categories and we're just making it a little bit more easy to understand. I'm not going to address any specific condition right now. Right. So cardiovascular system tonics. Now these are things even though persons have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, poor heart. These are some herbs that you may want to start adding to their life. So garlic. I know everybody in this room here has garlic or access to garlic. Hawthorn berry. Now, hawthorn berry is one of those, if somebody had had a congestive heart failure, this would be one you would prioritize to give them. So I'd put this above the garlic, especially if the person had a congestive heart failure, because this one actually helps to strengthen the heart. So hawthorn berries, right? Linden or motherwort. So these what we will use for circulatory system tonics. Now these are stimulants. These will help to boost blood flow. So persons complain about cold feet, maybe needles in the feet, poor circulation, and a good way to test poor circulation, especially for the ladies, is varicose veins. So anytime you see varicose veins, you know you have circulation problems. So what circulatory stimulants will do, these will help to increase circulation to those affected areas. So we're looking at things like Angelica, and the reason I have all of these up here tonight, wherever you are watching this webinar from, there must be one of these herbs there. Angelica, cayenne pepper, cinnamon, ginger, ginkgo, lavender, rosemary, turmeric. Right, so these will help with circulation. So if you or anybody who have circulation problems, consider adding one of these. Now, cayenne pepper is such a powerful one that it is one of those force aid that we use if somebody have like a heart attack. You take a pinch of cayenne pepper, not the most comfortable thing, but it will save a life. Take a pinch of cayenne pepper and put it under your tongue. The reason they put it under your tongue, there's a artery or vein that runs right under your tongue. So it bypasses the stomach and goes straight into the vein, hitting the bloodstream and going to the heart where it is needed. So that is one of those first aid remedies you may want to keep in mind. Cayenne pepper. So if you want to keep two things in a bag, I would tell you keep the charcoal and keep cayenne pepper. Right? So those two things will help. Cayenne pepper could also be used if somebody has cold feet. You could add it to some carrier oil. So things like olive oil or even castor oil. You rub it up in that. You rub it on their feet and then put on a socks. Or we'll put a plastic over it first and then put on a socks. So that would actually help to warm the feet and improve the circulation there. Now, what about our respiratory? Things that would help to expel mucus. When you're having that stuffy congestion, these are the herbs that you will use. Angelica is there again. Aniseed, chickweed, hyssop, and licorice. Now I'm going to give you a note on licorice. If somebody has high blood pressure, do not give them licorice. That is the only one that you will not give them for these herbs if they have high blood pressure. Right? Let's continue. Some of the other ones you can use is marshmallow root, mullein, very good. Olive orange peels. That is actually when you peel an orange, you dry the peels of the orange and you can use that as a long expectorant. So if somebody have congestion, a baby or anything, you can make a tea from that orange peel and give them to drink. Thyme, tulsi, and violet. Now, so we look at these things to get it out. What about things to strengthen the respiratory system? Suppose it's having poor breathing or breathing problems. These are some things that you will use. Astragalus, mullein, reishi mushrooms, or garlic bulb, right? So these are what you would use. Now, this was very popular during COVID. These are what you would use for antiviral. And this is just something I want to note. When you go to the doctor with a cough, what is cough? What is a cold normally caused by? A virus or a bacteria? Put your answers in the chat. What is a cold normally caused by? A virus or a bacteria? From what you know. And if you don't know, you will know soon. What is a cause? What do you know causes a cold? Is it a virus? Or okay, a virus, right? So if a cold is caused by a virus, you all are correct. Everybody put virus. Why would you give somebody a antibiotic for a cold? This was something I always used to ask. Because antibiotics kill bacteria. They do nothing to viruses. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. Antibiotics does not affect viruses in any way. They are given to kill bad bacteria, which kills a good one too. But when you have a cold, they normally give you antibiotics. What is that supposed to do? Just something to note. And that is why it pays to at least understand the basics so that even when you go to the doctor, you can, bring up these conversations and better help with your healthcare. In better cases, you probably just use the herbs and get it done. Right? So in this case, these are antiviral. So if you have virus infections, this is what you would use. Astragalus, echinacea, very popular one, elderberry, ginger, lemon, balm, right? And something else you could actually put in there too for antiviral, we mentioned earlier, is cinchona bark. Remember you use cinchona bark for malaria? We actually use cinchona bark there as well. Right. For hormonal tonics, last week we looked with Dr. Dean about the hormones being out of balance. These are the hormonal tonics that you can use. So licorice, again, not for hypertensives. Chaseberry, our next name for chaseberry is Vitex. Black cohish works really good for menopausal women, and wild yam, right? So if you are in these ages, especially past 50, these are the ones I recommend for you. Black cohish and wild yam. And the wild yam actually comes as a capsule and also comes as a cream that you can actually rub on your body. So these ones will actually help. For the other ladies, chaseberry, that would work very well for you as well. And you kind of use them and see which one works better for you. Now, I would also throw this in as a food. So when you pass 40, 45, 50, especially through menopause, one of the hormones that goes down is estrogen, as Dr. Dian mentioned last week. Estrogen is also responsible for the elasticity in your blood vessels. So when estrogen goes down, your blood vessels tend to be more rigid, which is why you find people going through menopause, especially with poor lifestyle choices, we tend to start registering higher than normal blood pressure. That's why the skin starts to get saggy and loose because that rigidity in the skin goes away. A natural way, and this is for persons who don't have hormonal cancers. I have to stick this in as an insult because if you have hormonal cancers like breast cancer, we may have to look at a different conversation. But just the average woman going through menopause, to help to naturally restore your estrogen levels, what you can use is soybeans. Now, soybeans has had a bad rap over the years, but I will be doing a separate presentation on that. But soybeans could actually help by adding soybeans into your diet. I'm looking for non-GMO soybeans that could actually help to bring back your normal estrogen levels and it still get the effects of estrogen. Now, if you want to test the point, look at the ladies who live in places like Japan and China who use a lot of soy. Look at how they age compared to us in the Western diet who don't use it. And also look at their incidence of breast cancer. Very low as well. All right, so just something to note. All right, let's look at some liver and blood tonics. Now, the reason you normally put liver and blood tonics is because the liver is the filtration for the blood. So if the blood is impure, the liver will filter it out. But if the liver is impure, the blood will become impure because that means the filter has gone bad. So it normally cleans both of them together. So for liver and blood tonics, we'll use dandelion, milk thistle. Milk thistle is especially good for the liver. It would be one of the top herbs for the liver. Burdock root helps with the blood as well. Hyssop and turmeric. Now, typically, anything that is bitter tends to be good for the blood. Just in case you were wondering, anything that is bitter tends to be good for the blood. Which is why, if we use things like bitter melon or corylli, leaves of corylli very bitter, and we use that to help control the blood sugar inside of the blood. So it tends to filter it out, it tends to clean out the blood. Right? So bitter things tend to be good for the blood. Now let's look at the urinary system. We're almost there. Corn silk. What is corn silk? This is the hair from the corns. When you pick the corns, the hair from the corns, you could actually take these and you'll make a tea from them. You'll be using the infusion method, right? That actually helps with the entire urinary system. So we're talking about the kidneys, the urinary tract, and the bladder. Tongue's grass, overerski, very powerful one, and nettle leaf. Now, when we talk about nettle, we're talking about stinging nettle. So right in the Maracay Valley, we have plenty stinging nettle. The leaves of the nettle, you can actually dry them and make teas from them. And these are very good for the urinary system, especially if somebody also has kidney stones. This nettle leaf helps with that. Now, if a person have kidney stones, I'm just throwing in some extra stuff here. So you see things like marshmallow roots and slippery elm, they tend to cause the inside surface of your body to be smooth. So if a person has or is trying to remove kidney stones, they're small enough, they don't need to be removed surgically. You would give them either sea moss gel, which has the same effect like marshmallow and slippery elm, or if you have slippery elm, you use slippery elm, or if you have marshmallow, you use marshmallow root, or if you have the flaxseed gel. You'll give them some of that first so that the insides can be coated, and then you would apply the nettle leaf tea. All right, so just something to note there. And the last one, I think this is the last one. Yes, so the nettle leaves will help to break it up and it will be passed out safely through urine. That's what it will do. Right? So lymphatic system, the lymphatic system encourages the clearance of metabolic waste through the effect of the lymphatic system. And again, this will be burdock root, calendula, cleavers, echinacea, figwort, red clover, red root, and violet. Galactogog. Somebody was talking about miscarriage. If a person have a baby and they want their breast milk to be increased, these are what you would use. These are called galactagogues. So aniseed, caraway, chamomile, fennel, fenugreek, marshmallow, milk thistle, nettle leaves. The same thing as leaves actually helps to increase breast milk from mom. Oat and tulsi. Right, so there are some options that you could use for that. Now let me just look through my slides here and make sure that I'm going to pause at the end to take some questions, right? So let me jump down to this one. These are some things that you can also keep in your house. Oregano oil. In the COVID periods, we was using this a lot. So oregano oil is an antiseptic to help with insect bites, stings, abrasion, cuts, and warts. It also helps with acne by applying to the affected area. It helps with athlete's foots, cold sores, muscle pain, skin rash, lice by just adding a few drops and then combing through here. It helps to fight infections. We was using this a lot during the COVID time. Now, keep in mind, oregano oil fights infection. So if you're using oregano oil, do not use it within 3 hours of using a probiotic. So you would use And next thing you do that is golden seal. So golden seal or oregano oil, when you're using them, do not use them the same time as you use your probiotics. So if you use them, you take them 3 hours after or later, then you'll use the probiotics. Because they are so strong, they'll also kill the probiotics inside of your capsule. Right? So just something to note. That is why we was using it during COVID. Now, peppermint, this helps with motion sickness, nausea. It also helps with the respiratory issues like asthma, sinusitis, bronchitis, cold, cough. Helps in relieving headaches and migraine, upset stomach, and it can also be used as an insect repellent. And then the last one we use is tea tree oil, which helps to fight bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Now, if you notice, tea tree oil, unlike antibiotics, fights all three: bacteria, fungi, and viruses. This also does that, the oregano oil, right? Helps with athlete's foot, colds, measles, sinusitis, helps deodorize or dedrum your carpet, remove odors, kill bacteria, as we mentioned, and treats mildew and mole and acne, right? So these are some of the herbs that you can use. The main thing I want you guys to take away is, remember, first of all, whatever the disease you're going to treat, learn the cause of the disease. As long as you know the cause, go first to remove the violations that would be there, and then you use the herbs to knock them out. Also, when you're using herbs, be patient. Your natural remedies, they will tend to take a lot longer than drug medication, but they will not give you any side effects. And when they fix the problem, they will fix that problem and create no new problems, right? So that being said, we have come to the end. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to open just like for a minute or two to answer any questions, and then we can wrap it up. So you could either type your questions in the chat, or you could raise your hand. I'll unmute you, and we'll take the questions there. Let me just look at the chat here, make sure we have everybody covered. Okay, there it is. Okay, Munifa, go ahead.
Okay, yes. I don't have a question. I just wanted to share something from some years ago. I
Sure.
I had met this gentleman on board, and he was hospitalized, and he brought the stone to show us. He told us that's the first time I learned about the corn here.
Mhm.
Right. He told us that he used the corn here and make like a tea with it, and it helped him to pass the stone, the kidney stone, and
Mhm.
he brought the actual stone for us to see it. That was really something else. Yes. So
Wow.
I heard you talking about the corn here, and I can't remember the other thing, but I remember the corn here because I remember the gentleman. And then when he went to do his check again, they didn't see the
Mhm.
stone. So that was the stone that was actually harassing him. And he got rid of it
Well,
by using the corn here. According to him, he made tea and he used it a couple of times. And then when he went to urinate, he just hear the thing drop. And he looked and he saw was the stone. All right.
wow. Powerful testimony. Thanks for sharing that, Munifa. I appreciate that. Very good. Very good. Lovely. So we have some testimonies coming in there. All right. So anybody has any questions in regards to the herbs? Any specific questions in regards to the herbs? Just let me know. We'll answer them quickly and then we'll wrap it up. I know we didn't cover every single herb here, but we covered most of them based on the categories, so at least you could have a working knowledge when you go forward. All right. So it looks like we are just about clear. Um, as we go now into the rest of the presentation, we'll have a better appreciation. So like when we actually place the herbs at the end, you'll know how you're preparing them, if you're using a decoction, if you're using a infusion, if you're using a poultice. For the fibroids patient, we normally use the poultice as well for the charcoal. So apart from the other things that we would give them, we normally put a charcoal right in front here, the charcoal poultice here, and again, we'd help you with the drawing out. So that's the next application. Just remember that we use the charcoal poultice for. All right. So something to note there. All right. So that being said, let us just bow our heads as we wrap it up, and then we will call it a night. Dear Father in heaven, we want to thank you so much, Lord, for granting us the knowledge of your herbs and how to use them. As we go into our daily applications, we just ask, Lord, that you may bring back to our remembrance all that we would have studied. And as we come in contact with these herbs, help us, Lord, to utilize them in our everyday life so that we can gain the health for which you have promised us. We know that all of your remedies bring healing, and once we trust them, apply them by faith, we'll receive the blessing for which you have promised. With everyone on this webinar, those of us who will be watching the recording, and as we continue to go night after night, well, week after week, as we continue to bless the information, bless the speakers who will be coming on. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, everyone, have yourselves a great night. And this is also available on the Evesham Sda YouTube channel. So if you miss it, you could also pick it up there. The recording should be available as soon as we finish here. And if you guys have any questions, remember, you can also send them in the church chat, or you could send them over to us at support@fitmat.com, and you'll be able to, we'll answer those questions for you and send back a reply, or maybe we'll even do one on one of these webinars. Anyways, take care, have yourselves a great night, and I'll see you guys next week. I'll try to announce the topic a bit earlier so that you guys will know exactly what you're coming for. All right, take care and bye bye.